Claude Akins lived a double life for years, and no one knew, until now. I used to think Claude Akins was exactly the kind of man he played on screen. Big, intimidating, the guy who could end a fight with one look. But the more I learned about him, the more I realized Hollywood had pulled off one of its greatest illusions. Because the man audiences feared for decades was living an entirely different life once the cameras stopped rolling. And somehow, almost nobody noticed. Here's what surprised me the most. Claude Akins appeared in nearly 100 movies and well over 100 television episodes. He worked beside legends like John Wayne, Burt Lancaster, Charles Bronson, Lee Marvin, and Spencer Tracy. Yet ask the average movie fan to name him, and many would hesitate. Show them his face? They'd recognize him instantly. Claude once joked that he was Hollywood's highest paid unknown. When I first heard that, I laughed. Then I realized it wasn't really a joke. It was the story of his entire career. Most people remember Sheriff Lobo. Others remember the tough sheriff in a Western, the military officer barking orders, or the dangerous outlaw standing across from the hero. He looked born for those roles. But that image hid the real Claude Akins. And maybe that's why I think he spent decades living two completely different lives. One belonged to Hollywood. The other belonged to the man nobody saw. Long before television audiences knew his face, Claude was growing up in Bedford, Indiana, after being born in Georgia in 1926. It wasn't the sort of place where movie stars came from, just a small Midwestern town where people worked hard and expected you to do the same. His father served as a police officer. That probably explains a lot. People who knew Claude often described him as disciplined long before acting entered the picture. Then World War II interrupted everything. Instead of chasing theater roles, he joined the U.S. Army Signal Corps and served in both the Burma and Philippine campaigns. I always find that fascinating. We usually remember actors for the characters they pretend to be. Sometimes we forget they lived remarkable lives before Hollywood ever called. After the war, Claude wasn't looking for shortcuts. He studied speech and theater at Northwestern University. He worked on stage, learned Shakespeare, performed in touring productions. Nothing glamorous, just years of learning the craft. That's another thing I admire about him. He wasn't discovered overnight. He earned his way there. His first film role came in From Here to Eternity. Imagine walking onto a set with Burt Lancaster and Frank Sinatra when you're still trying to prove you belong. Claude later admitted he was terrified. I don't blame him. Apparently Lancaster sensed it immediately and helped calm his nerves. That small act of kindness stayed with Claude for years. Sometimes careers change because somebody famous decides to be generous. By the late 1950s, Claude had become one of Hollywood's favorite character actors. There was just one problem. He looked too believable. His broad shoulders, his deep voice, that square jaw. Studios saw one thing: authority, or danger. There wasn't much room for romance. Claude understood exactly how Hollywood worked. He once joked that if he'd looked like Robert Redford, he'd have been cast as the hero. Instead, he became everyone else's villain. Oddly enough, he never seemed bitter about it. He simply kept working, and working, and working. Westerns, war movies, crime dramas, television. If producers needed someone reliable, Claude's phone rang. One story really caught my attention. He was almost cast as Dragline in Cool Hand Luke. The role eventually went to George Kennedy. Kennedy won an Academy Award. Years later, Claude admitted losing that part was probably the biggest disappointment of his career. You can't help wondering, would everything have changed if one casting decision had gone differently? We'll never know. But Claude didn't spend years dwelling on missed opportunities. He moved forward. That's probably why his career lasted so long. Then came something nobody expected. He finally became the leading man. Not in movies. On television. NBC cast him as Sonny Pruitt in Movin' On, a series about a truck driver traveling across America. This wasn't another villain or another sheriff. Sonny was warm, funny, dependable. For the first time, audiences saw Claude's personality instead of simply his intimidating appearance. The show became a success. Even President Gerald Ford reportedly enjoyed watching it. I honestly think Moving On revealed the real Claude Akins better than almost anything else he'd ever done. Then came the role that changed everything, Sheriff Elroy P. Lobo. It started as a supporting character on BJ and the Bear,